This is Gemara in Kesubos, Daf Yomi, and we're holding at the very top of the Amud. We a little bit pulled up short. We didn't have the Daf in front of us yesterday, but we're in the middle of discussing the case of a Moitzi Shemra, that if someone defames his wife. Someone says his wife is mizana. There's two punishments he has. He gets malchus and he has to pay the meya sela. And the question is, when, in what case he has to pay? And we concluded yesterday with a stira, in which do you only have to pay when one was a boyel of the wife, and then he was Moitzi Shemra, or in any case that one is Moitzi Shemra, he gives out a bad rumor about his wife that's found to be not true, does he get Malkus? So Rav Papa Amar, in the top line of Menvav and Aleph, Rav Papa answers, my Baal Loike, what did the Brisa mean when it said that if the husband was together with his wife, that is the only case in which there is Malkus? The Katani Asam, Malkus means cash. Interesting. Vakarle Mammon Malchus, says the Gemara. That's a funny way of talking. Yes, we call Mammon Malchus. Vatanan, as we see in a Mishnah, if someone says, I take upon myself half of my erech value, no, he said Chatzi Arko. So he pays half his value, depending on his age, etc., etc. That's the value he gives to the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, like the Noisein Erech Shalim. Says you didn't know? He gets Malchus and he gives his full Erech value. Says the Gemara, like Amai. What's going on? The reason he gets Malchus. Where did the Malchus come from? Explains the Gemara, Amra Baba, no. Like he gets hit by. It doesn't mean literally Malchus. It means figuratively he gets hit by like Be'erech Shalim with a full evaluation. My time, he has to pay a full evaluation, because if he would have said erech yav, the erech value of his half, then he'd have to pay the whole value. Why? When one says the erech value of my half, so split my body in half, and now your neshama is totally in that half, and therefore you have to pay for the whole thing. But we see from this brisa is that the word loike, malchus, doesn't always mean malchus. It can be used figuratively, that you get hit. It can mean that you have to pay mamain. Tanu Rabbanan, and now we continue with the discussion into the halacha when you have to pay. What is the punishment of a Moitzi Shemra? Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, the Anshu Aisai. It says, again, what's Moitzi Shemra? Let's remind ourselves that the husband says, I found my wife to be not faithful. I found that she was mizana. And then we find out that the husband was lying. Husband gets malchus and has to pay. And now we're going to go through the different dinim and specifications when this applies. Says the Raisa, Anshu Aisai, the husband gets punished. This means he has to pay the kanas. The Yasru, the pasuk says, they yell at him. Zem Malchus, our first to Malchus. Explains the Gemara. I understand that the word oynesh could mean cash. So we see a precedent that the Torah uses the word oynesh for cash. And how do we know that the word v'yasru refers to malchus? We learned the word yisro, that they're going to yell at him by the defamer, for they chasten him, I think is the word, by ben seira umayra. V'yisru mi ben, and we use the word by ben seira to learn to the word ben. Ben mi ben, and the word ben, we learned another word ben, which means malchus oyim ben hakos arasha, that it means that you're going to get malchus. So from the word v'hasru me yisra, we equate it to a ben seira mayra. From ben seira mayra, we use the word ben to link it to another pasuk as the word ben, which means malchus. So says the Gemara, v'yasru refers to that you're going to get malchus. Explains the Gemara, Azhara l'maitzi shemra minalan. That we know that there is a punishment, that there is malchus. But any time that we know that Bezdin gives a punishment, we need to have the Torah to speak out a warning. So when did the Torah speak out the warning of the Moitzi Shemra? Two answers. Rav Lazar Amar, Rachel says, don't be a gasamonger. Included in that is Moitzi Shemra, you're speaking badly about your wife. Rav Nosson Amar v'nishmart v'kol davara, you should guard yourself from any evil. So now, in classical Gemara ping pong, why doesn't Rav Elazar hold like Rav Nosson? Why does Rav Nosson hold like Rav Elazar? Explains the Gemara. The Rav Elazar, my time Amar me'ai. Why doesn't Rav Elazar say from the pasuk of Nishmartim Kol Davara? He explains to me by Rabbi Chuz ben Yair. We need that pasuk for something else. When Nishmartim Kol Davara, Mikanam Rabbi Chuz ben Yair. You know what the pasuk teaches me when it says, "Guard yourself from any evil." Al Yahar Adam Hayom. Don't think terrible thoughts by day, which will cause you to have a seminal mission at night by having these corrupt thoughts by day. So the pasuk of Nishmartim Kol Davara teaches you have to stay far away. Guard yourself. Don't even think of something during the day that could cause you to do a sin later on. For Rav Nasa, why doesn't Rav Nasa learn from Rav Elazar pasuk of Lo Silech Rachel? Says Rav Elazar, you know. Says Rav Nasa, you know what that pasuk is used for? That pasuk is used as a hazara for Bezdin. That they shouldn't. Bezdin can't have a double standard. They can't be soft to one and harsh to another. Bezdin has to have one standard for everyone. And now we continue into Abraisa, 7 lines from the medium-sized lines discussing Motzi Shamra. If the guy who was a Motzi Shamra, he got up and he said, my wife was Mizaneh, but he did not collaborate to the Eidim. He did not tell the Eidim, come and testify. And they on their own walked into Bezdin and said, yeah, what this guy says is true. His wife was Mizaneh. Who ain't I like us? So he, as being a defamer, a Motzi Shamra, does not get Malkus. Ve'ino nice than Meya Sela, he doesn't have to pay Meya Sela. He, she, and the Eidim Zaymim Makdim Lebeis Haskila. If indeed she was Mizaneh, she and the Eidim Zaymim go to Beis Haskila. It should sound familiar. We had this a few days ago. Says the Gemara, really? You think she and the Eidim Zayman have to go to Beis Haskila? That's not true. It's one or the other. Makdim leBeis Haskila. Explains the Gemara. So says the Gemara, what it means is, so now the Gemara explains what's going on in the Braisa. We just said that the Motzi Shemra, the man does not get Malchus and pay because he did not collaborate with the Eidim. Taima, 2 lines of the medium-sized lines. He didn't tell him to come and testify. If he told him to come and testify, even if he did not pay them to be false to Eidim, still as a Motzi Shemra, he's going to get Malchus and have to pay the Kanas. It says the Gemara, the Fukim of Rav Yehuda, this comes to preclude and exclude from the halacha of Rav Yehuda on the first medium-sized line. The Tanya Rav Yehuda Aimer in Achayev Yischar Eidim says Rav Yehuda, you're not obligated until you hire and pay the Eidim. Where did Rav Yehuda get this from? That the Motzi Shemra is not only that you told Eidim to testify falsely, but you have to actually pay them cash. My time with Rav Yehuda Meravuas Yasima Sima, he makes Xer Shava from the word Sima, placing. Sevachav Samla Alila Svarim Xevasam Lasim Lecha Neshech. Malhala and Mama, just like over there, Lasimila and Neshach, a pasuk about ribis, about interest, it means cash. Avkan, Mamain. So it's only going to be a punishment, it says Rav Yehuda, if you hire the Eidim Zaymimin, whereas we are learning now like Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosef Sidoni, Bei Rav Shimon ben Yochai, Asya Sima. They learned very similar that Sima teaches us that it's only like Rav Yehuda if you paid and hired the Eidim Zaymimin. Ask the Gemara on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, you have to pay the Eidim Zaymin. What does it mean, pay? What if you hired someone by paying them by paying them land, not cash? What if you're going to pay them less than a Shava Bruta? What if you're going to pay 2 Eidim with 1 Bruta? Says the Gemara, Ravashi asks similarly, if someone defamed his wife about her first marriage, what's halacha? If he defames her on her brother's marriage, what's halacha? Says Mar Pashan Miachad. You just asked me 5 questions. I can answer one of them. The Tani Rav Yoina is speaking to Sati Lishazeh. It says in the Torah, I gave my daughter to this man, Lozeh below the Yavim. So in the pasuk of Motzi Shamra, it says as beating Sati Lishazeh and coming to exclude giving it to the Yavam. So in the case of the Yavam, the case of Al Nusui Achiv, there will be no Kinas for a Motzi Shamra. And now we roll back to yesterday's daf, in which we had a machlekes Rabbanan and Rav Elazar. What was the machlekes, which is where we started off today answering up a stira? The machlekes was, does a Motzi Shamra only apply to someone who is mizaneh? Incorrect. Does Moti Shemra only apply if the husband slept with his wife? And if after the husband slept with his wife, after he was baal, he comes in and he says, my wife was mizaneh, then if he's lying, he gets malchus or has to pay the kanas? Or no, regardless if husband and wife are together with each other, if he comes in and says, my wife was mizaneh, he has to pay the kanas. What is the halacha? Says the Gemara, my Rabbanan and my Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. We had a machlekes Rabbanan and Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. What are these opinion? Deitanya, we learned in a brayse, the case that I saw Shemra. What is the case of Moiti Shamar Balabazin Marablanila Masadi Lebitcha Besulim? The case of Moiti Shamar, the case of a defamer, is when the husband comes to Bezdin and says to the girl's father, Ploini, talking to the future father-in-law, I did not find to the daughters besulim. So if there are even that the girl was mizana tachtov while they already had erisin, yeshak suba mana, she gets 100. And mishedim shezinsa tachtov yeshak suba mana. What? If there were Eidim that she was mizana, she gets 100. Paskili, she gets killed. She was mizana after she had erisin to this man. Says the Gemara, and hopefully it sounds familiar at the very beginning of the Masechta. Im yesh edim shezinsa tachtov biskila, zinsa meikar. You have to put a comma and insert that if there was tachtov mizaneh, then you get 100. Then you get skila, excuse me. If you're zinsa meikara, if she was mizaneh before they got married, then yesh ksuba amana, then she gets a ksuba of 100. Now we continue back into that braysa. Nimsa sheshemra einoi Shemra. Let's say if the defamer has found out that it's not to be true, that he's lying, he's indeed a defamer, who like if an he gets malchus and has to pay 100 seller bein baal bein loy baal, whether he slept with her or not. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov that's the machlekes. The Tanakama said if the husband lied and said my wife was mizana, it's found that he's lying, whether he slept with her or not. Allah is he gets malchus and pays me'asela. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov says no, loy nemru dvarim alalu ella kishabal, only if they were together. So now the Gemara explains. Bishlam Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, I know the Rav Elazar ben Yaakov works beautifully in the pasuk, as the pasuk says, "Uba'alel." The pasuk says, and he comes to her, ve'ekrivaleh, and she comes near to her, and then the whole story begins. So it seems from the psukim that the husband and wife slept together. Then he came in and made up this story, and that's the story of Maitzi Shamra. According to the Rabbanan, that it's regardless whether they slept together or not. What does the Torah mean when it says Baal Lev Ekrav Aleo? Explains the Gemara, Baal Lev Ba'alilus. He comes to her with accusations, with meaningless accusations. Vekrav Aleo B'dvarim, and he came close to her with words. Gemara continues asking, Bishlam Elazar ben Yaakov, I know makes a lot of sense, because he slept together, and he says to the father, your daughter didn't have besulim, she was mizaneh. Makes sense that the whole story only begins if they slept together. According to the Rabbanan, that they didn't actually have to sleep together for the story to begin. What does the guy mean when he says to the father, I didn't find within your daughter besulim? Answers the Gemara, Kashrei Besulam. I did not find the upholders. I did not find the Eidim that say that she was a Besula. Not that they slept together. The husband saying, I found that she was Mizana. There are no Eidim that saying that it's not true. Bishlam Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, the last medium-sized line. I know the Chsev Elu Besulei B'iti. The pasuk continues, and it says that the father says, and these are the signs of the besulim of my daughter. According to Rabbanan, what's going on over here? There was not necessarily they ever slept together. Again, the Gemara answers, it means the upholders, the Eidim. According to Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, it makes a lot of sense that they spread out the sheet. In order to see if there were besulim the first time they are together. According to Rabbanan, what exactly does it mean they spread out the sheet? They never slept together. They didn't have to sleep together. Amar Rav Avua, 5 lines to the bottom. Parshu ma shesam loy. Explains Rav Avua, you know what the pasuk means? They clarify ma shesam loy, what he placed upon her. It's a play on words. Kedetani learned in a brayso. Parshu asimla. What does it mean? Literally, they spread out the sheet. Malami shaban eidim al zev, eidim al shalzeh, eidim shalzeh, eidim shalzeh. This means that witnesses come for each one. Witnesses come either for the husband. Witnesses come for the father. Ubayrim esadavar, and they clarify the matter. Kisim like a new sheet. They clarify like a clean white sheet, making everything pristine and clear. No, read the pasuk literally. Simla mamish. It refers to the blanket, the bedding. And that's the end of the exchange between Rav Ben Yaakov and the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan hold the story of Motzi Shemra is whether they were the new husband and wife or together or not. Rav Ben Yaakov hold only if they were together. Shalach Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Yaakov, 3 lines at the bottom, bar Guri Mishmei Rav Yechron. Afal Gav Shalom Zin V'Chalot Harakula Shechalek Akaza Ben Bia Kedarka L'Bia Shloi Kedarka. He sends the following statement: in the entirety of the Torah, there's no difference in Bia Kedarka, Bia Shloi Kedarka, whether a man sleeps with his wife in a normal manner from the front or whether he does so from the back. There's no difference with regarding to malchus. There's no difference with regarding to punishments. Avol, he says, Motzi Shemra chalak. With regard to our halacha, Motzi Shemra, there's a difference. Listen to this one. The only time there's going to be a chiyuv Motzi Shemra is when the new husband and wife slept together. He penetrated her from behind. But then he's Motzi Shemra Kidarkoi. He says that she slept with someone else in a normal manner. Says the Gemara, Keman. Who does this price go like? Ikra Banan, Afagav's Labal. Rabbanan held nothing to do with Bia. So who cares? Kedarka didn't have to sleep together at all. Ikra Rav Ben Yaakov. If this price is going like Rav Ben Yaakov as we turn over to Menvav and Mebeis, I divide the Kedarka Binan. Rav Ben Yaakov said it's a regular case of a regular natural tashmish between husband and wife. So where do you get the Shloi Kedarka business? Says the Gemara, you're right, we messed it up. The opposite. He was pointing out that everything has to be Kedarka, that if the tashmish of the act of intercourse was from behind with Shloi Kedarka, then it would not be a story of Motzi Shemra. And now we continue within the halachos. Now this new Mishnah with ensuing Gemara is really going to be a bit of a chazara. It's going to be the background of a lot of the halachas that we've discussed already, which are the father's monetary rights to his daughter's earnings, his daughter's findings, his daughter's kinasais, his daughter's penalties, his daughter's marriages, all the things what the father gets. Now we're going to learn the sources. Says the Mishnah, Ha'av Zakei Bebitoi, a father merits in his daughter's kedushin bekesav shtar babiyah. If the father marries off his daughter, and the father marries off his daughter, he gets the cash for the daughter. And if you look at the Tab Rashi, points out it's talking about either Ketana or Naira, or he gets the shtar, or Bebiyah, he has the right to give over his daughter to be married Bebiyah with an act of intercourse. Zakai b'mitziyaseh, he as well gets her what she finds, and the money that she earns, and he's allowed to annul her vows. The father accepts her get, but if she has something from her mother, the father does not get to eat those peiros. Niseis, what happens when this girl gets married? Nisu in a full-fledged marriage. Yes, her father has more rights than her husband has more rights than the father had. That the husband eats peiros in her lifetime. And now the flip side is yes, to support her, and he would have to redeem her, and he would have to bury her. Perkuna meaning ransom in case she gets captured. Rav Yehuda Aimer. Afilu ani should be says Rav Yehuda halacha about a levaya. Even the poorest person in Klai Yisrael cannot have any less than 2 flutes, and a woman that's lamenting at the levaya, that's what he has to provide for his wife's burial, which we'll see more in the Gemara. But now we begin the beginning of the Gemara. This is reminiscent of Gemara and Kedushin that I'm sure many people have learned. Now the Mishnah taught us that the father gets what of his daughter? The kesef, the money. When his daughter gets married, goes to the father. Says the Gemara, bekesef minol, and where do we know the father gets the cash? Amar Yehuda Amar Kav Yatzachina in kasef. It says in the pasuk that she leaves free in kasef. Superfluous. Why did I have to say in kasef? It already said Yatzachinam. Why did I have to say now he gets no money? So the Gemara Darshins in Kesef Latam says, talking about an Eved, that there's no money, or actually a Shivcha more particularly, there's no money to this master, V'yesh Kesef La'adain Acher. But there is money to this other master, meaning the father. Omana Avia. How do you know that the father is the one that gets the cash? Maybe your drasha is right, that when the Shivcha leaves servitude, there is no cash going to the master. And in this case of Kedushin, there is cash going to someone. But how do you know the cash goes to the father? Maybe she gets to keep the cash herself. Says the Gemara, now that we know the father is the one who has the rights to accept Kedushin on behalf of his daughter who's a Mayra and a Naira, he's going to accept Kedushin for her, and she herself is going to be the one that makes the money? That makes no sense. Says Gemara, 1 second. Oh, I'll give it to you. By a ketana, by a minor, that the father has full control over her. I agree that you're right, it'll go to the father. Avol naira dislayad. But in the case of a naira in which she has her own legal capacity, she's able to marry off herself. So maybe she should get the cash from the wedding. Our Mishnah started off we pointed out that Tabrash is talking about even Nairas. Ask the Gemara now, why is that true? By the Naira, maybe she has the right to get married, she should keep the cash herself. Amar Kra explains the Gemara bin Rel Beisavia. Pasuk says when she's a Naira in her father's house, and from here we darshin a pasuk that we learned in the past. Kol Shevach Nurim Lavia, all the earnings of a Naira go to the father. Ask the Gemara, really all the earnings? How do we know that that which the daughter makes goes to the father? Man sells his daughter la'ama as a maidservant. Just like a maidservant, the earnings go to the master. Goes to the father. Why do we need this pasuk? If you just told me that Midrash Beisavia teaches me that everything goes to the father, why do we need a new pasuk of a chayim kar ishes bitoy that goes to the father? We know that already. Answers the Gemara. Excuse me. Teipo glei min Rabbi Savia. That's the end of the kasha. Why don't we learn now from this pasuk? Elo, you know what I'll tell you? That this pasuk v'chimkar ishes b'itay is referring to afaris Tarim. And therefore, it's not telling me anything about the father, and so too, it can't tell me anything about the father getting the rights to his daughter. And now the Gemara asks in obvious form, great. It's talking about Afaris Nedarim. So learn from Afaris Nedarim that the father gets the money of the Kedushin. You can't learn one from the other. One is Isser to be annul the vows. One is cash. You never learn cash from Isser. Learn from the fine. You don't learn out money from fines either. Learn from the fact that the father gets the money of their depreciation and humiliation. The father has some shaykhs to it, that the father has the rights to marry off his daughter, and therefore makes a difference if his daughter is humiliated or worth or paygim. Elamistavra says the Gemara, the Chimamayid Rachmana Yitzia, the Kavasar Kamamayid. Answers the Gemara, really, we're learning out from Yatzachinam Ein Kosef, the original pasuk. And you asked, how do we know? Maybe it goes to the girl herself. Says the Gemara, no. Yitzia the Kavasar Kamamayid. The pasuk is talking about similar to the way the maidservant leaves. And just like when the maidservant leaves in Kasef, her master gets nothing. So too when this girl leaves her father's rishus, she gets nothing. It goes all to the father. Ask the Gemara, the two are not comparable. When the maidservant leaves her master's rishus, she leaves it 100%. But when she leaves her father's rishus, it's not absolute. She still has to go to the chuppah. So how can you say you're leaving the father's rishus? It's just like the maidservant leaving, 100%. So to over here, it's 100%. It should go to the father. Answers the Gemara, no, she does leave her father's rishus 100% with regard to being annulling the vows. May Rishu say, for that regard, the opposite, excuse me. One more time. It says the Gemara, she did leave her father's rishus. She know that he no longer could be made for the dharma on his own. That was the part I want to correct. He still could be made for his dharma, but not 100%, because now the husband could also be made for his dharma. So if it is considered leaving the father's rishus for this regard, and therefore we could learn it from the pasuk of Yatzachina and Kasef, and that's going to be the source that the father gets the money of the Kesef Kedushin of his daughter. We'll pick it up from the Shtar Rabia. Actually, let's just finish it up. Shtar Rabia says the Gemara, how do we know the father gets Shtar Rabia? Minalan, Amar Kravais Ish Acher, Iskish Avayis Adadi. We're equating all the different Avayis, all the different forms of marriage go together. So just like the father gets Kedushin, so too the father will get the Shtar and the Bia. Zakibim Siyasa, the father's going to get that which he finds. And tomorrow we'll pick it up in Daf Mem Zayin, in which we'll discuss the father getting the rights to that which his daughter finds.